All right, everybody, it's 2:02, so let's go ahead and get started. So once again, my name is Kevin Hancock. I'm Director of Solutions here at Exostar. Thank you for joining us today for today's session. Before we jump into the formal presentation, just a few housekeeping details. So today's session is just scheduled to last 30 minutes. That does include Q&A. Now, you're going to be muted during today's presentation. When you signed up, people were asked if they had some questions that they'd like answered. So we're going to answer those at the end of today's session. If for some reason we do have an outage, if you just wait for a minute, you can try to reconnect, or you can use that URL you were sent via email at any time to connect back into the session as well. If at any time you'd like to speak with one of our supply chain experts, you can reach out to us a couple of different ways. You can email us at supplychain@exostar.com, or you can come to our website, www.exostar.com. There's a chat feature there on every page, and we'd be more than happy to answer your questions in that manner as well. Now, we've just got a few people on the line today. So if you do want to have a question that you may not have submitted ahead of time answered as we go through today's session, if you could type those into chat or into the question and answer area of today's session, we'll answer those as time allows as well. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into unlocking revenue, how to automate your order to cash process so you can drive profitability across your business. As I mentioned, my name's Kevin Hancock, Director of Solutions here at Exostar, and I'm joined on today's webinar by Derek Baggerly, also of Exostar, but came to Exostar from one of our recent acquisitions called Robot Morning. Derek, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Kevin. I'm Derek Baggerly, head of A&D Strategic Development at Exostar, which in essence means I concern myself with all ways to bring value to the Exostar supply chain.
Excellent, and we welcome that, Derek. All right, everybody. So this is what we're going to cover during today's session. I'm not going to read it to you. I'm just take a minute there, take a look at what we're going to talk about so you understand what you're going to be hearing today. All right. Now, what we're going to really talk about today is how can we improve a process. In this case, it's going to be that order to cash process. Now, as QX Global found, whoops, and I misspelled global. I'm sorry about that. I'll make sure I fix that before we send these slides out to you. We lose quite a bit of time and effort in process inefficiencies. And many of these process inefficiencies are driven because we've got some kind of manual steps we're taking to solve a problem, right? And as a software company ourselves at Exostar, I'm constantly frustrated by the one-off manual processes we have to fix a solution, especially when you're dealing with software. And all of us deal with software on a daily basis where it's all about automation, right? It's all about trying to improve something. But invariably, across businesses, there are various manual steps that we're taking. And wherever we can, we need to try to get those out of the way. Now, when we can automate things, there's really 5 key areas where we're going to benefit from that. Obviously, we're going to increase efficiency, right? We're going to be able to streamline our tasks. We're going to reduce the time we spend on those tasks. So hopefully we can do better things or things we enjoy more or things that benefit our business because we've taken out those manual steps with automation. And now we can do other focused things that improve the overall business and improve, cash flow and all those other things that we do to improve the business overall. And obviously, that will reduce costs, right? Obviously, it reduces labor costs. and I will stop saying obviously. It'll also improve the overall effects of the business. That improves cash flow. One of the key ways we'll improve cash flow is we'll take out inaccuracies because we are people and we all make mistakes. And when we're doing manual processes, when we're updating spreadsheets, when we're entering data into spreadsheets, we are making mistakes. Especially as many of us do, we'll enter information or we'll take information from one system, we'll enter it into a spreadsheet, and then oftentimes we'll pivot to another system, take that information and update it there. We're just possibly compounding errors, and it can become somewhat like a game of telephone. If we can improve our inaccuracies, we can improve customer satisfaction. When we remove inaccuracies from the equation, we get faster response times. The business itself is more proactive rather than reactive, and we can make better decisions because our data is accurate. And then all of that leads to us to be able to scale our business, improve things, and as I mentioned, make those better decisions. Now, what we're really talking about in a practical example across aerospace and defense is that, right, there are a number of large primes out there and others that have different supply chain portals. As many of you are suppliers in that space, you probably go into these different supply chain portals. You've got one, say, for Boeing, you've got one for Raytheon, you've got one for BAE, etc. Exostar knows this because oftentimes you're using Exostar credentials to access those supply chain portals. Oftentimes, Exostar is hosting those supply chain portals, or we're at least providing the front door for you to get access to those and other applications that you may be using. So you're going into those supply chain portals, you or your other procurement groups or buyers in your organization. They're going in to pick up orders. They're going in there to update promise dates. They're trying to find out if there are new things that you can supply that organization, etc. And then you're oftentimes pivoting around to your own ERP systems to take that information that you just grabbed from that portal and then updating your own internal systems. You may also be creating a spreadsheet because you need additional information. You need to put this in a different context so your organization can understand it in your terms. This, as I've just described, is a manual process, and it is limiting on how much you can do for the business itself because you're kind of trapped in this cycle of, well, we need to know what orders we have out there, what changes to those orders have occurred, and we need to do this in enough or in a timely enough manner so we can respond accordingly. Now, as I mentioned, Exostar is itself a network of folks like you in the aerospace or another highly regulated industry. You've been invited into this Exostar network because one of those prime contractors or those folks who have supply chain needs has requested to work with you. Or you've come to Exostar because we have expertise in this particular area, and you've joined that Exostar community, that Exostar network, right? You're one of 52,000 suppliers out there and one of almost 250,000 users of that Exostar network. Now, one of the key components of the Exostar network is that it's a trusted network. That means when your organization itself was invited into the community, Exostar at least vetted your organization and determined you weren't on a denied parties list. You're at, the address they said you were, and oftentimes the organization that invited you gathered additional information about your organization. It was kind of a key component to the aerospace and defense industry. They oftentimes have gathered things about your cybersecurity posture, maybe whether or not you're compliant with CMMC. They've asked you to answer questionnaires, provide information about, your organization, your I-9, et cetera. So you're a trusted supplier in that network. And because of that, you've been given access to a supply chain portal, a collaboration tool, or something like that that improves your overall relationship and responsiveness to that your customer. Now, this Exostar network has built up over time because Exostar was actually founded by those large aerospace and defense prime contractors. Their goal in founding Exostar way back when, about 25 years ago, was that they wanted to build a trusted network of supply chain partners so they could improve that overall collaboration. In that time, Exostar's added additional capabilities. We brought on additional companies like Robot Morning that provides particular functions that are unique to the aerospace and defense industry. So Exostar has that deep knowledge, those deep relationships across that to build that trusted network that focuses on that trust, security, and compliance. And the thing that we're here to talk about today is Exostar's demand line application. This is a SaaS application that allows you to connect into those different supply chain portals and automate both the download of information from those to give you that information about changes in demand that are going to affect your business, hopefully positively, but sometimes negatively, allow you to respond accordingly per your contract, allow you to take that information and update your ERP systems. So again, your business itself can make better decisions. You can improve your overall processes. You can take out those manual data flows or processes that you have, and you can focus on improving the overall business when you do that. Derek, anything you want to add kind of about demand line itself and kind of its overall goal?
Sure, just a little color. I mean, so from the prior picture, it was a good example. So historically, suppliers have been forced into, and every time we've pulled them, the number of portals they have to deal with exceeds the number of customers they have, right? Wrap your head around that one. Because a lot of customers have multiple portals that you need to log into. So the idea here is really to provide automation where in the past you've been forced to just throw bodies at it, adding complexity, time, mistakes, et cetera, and not, preventing you from not just running your own business, but being able to be responsive to your customer.
Great. Now, what we're going to show you next is a series of screenshots that'll give you a feel for the kind of information and the kind of experience you'll have within the demand line application itself. So the first thing we want to illustrate is how do I, if you will, make those connections with those different supply chain portals out here. And this shows you really that pick list, if you will. So what you see here is 4 different supply chain portals. And what's even better is in this search bar that you see up there, I can search the Exostar network to determine if there are other suppliers out there that I do business with. And I also want to connect with them because these are prepackaged connections, if you will, that Exostar has because we not only host a number of these applications, but the Exostar customers themselves have asked us to create connections between those critical primes that they have and the application. So you open up the screen and you set that schedule of how often do I want this to update against that. I set this, on a daily, weekly, every few hours, every minute, however I want to set that interval that I can actually consume it by. It's wonderful to say I want instantaneous updates, but let's be realistic. None of us can handle that kind of information. So you schedule this periodically to run based on your particular needs. Derek, anything you want to add on this particular side of the screen?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a technical screen, but it's also a good example of the power of the broader network, because you see over on the left there, those are the customers, and then you can pull down from a pick list. Okay, here are the additional customers I want to add. So as that continues to grow, you get to add more and more of your key customers to the network and automate all of them. So in addition to the cool functional aspects of this, it's also a good example of, okay, here's where you see the power of the network growing.
Right. Now, so once that information starts to feed us, right, we're going to be able to get views of this, right? And so what this shows is the change in demand on, on some number of parts over some number of days that we've collected from that instance. Now, often when you log into a supply chain portal today, you really see a point in time representation of your orders with that customer, right? So you're going to see how that current order stands. But with demand line, what you're going to see is how that order may have been added to or subtracted from over time. So we're building up that historical information from that customer to let you know how those demand signals have changed as those orders are placed, right? And as we all would hope, right? Well, actually, I should say, what we would hope is if somebody places a firm order with me, that I know that order is not going to change over time. But what we clearly see and what often happens in this space is that because of the complexity of the things we're building, the number of different components that are part of those, the different folks that feed into that supply chain, these things do change over time. And oftentimes these changes are pushed out directly from the ERP system that's hooked up to that supply chain portal. Those are being pushed out and your orders are being updated. And you may not always know when that happens. And this kind of gives you that view, right? You're seeing these two parts and you're seeing a change in demand versus ordered and remaining across that over time.
Yeah, this one gets me really excited, honestly. So how many times have people had, a customer either pushes out or pulls in, threatening cash flow or threatening your ability to deliver on time, and you squawk, and then they say, well, my system says this date. If you think it changed, you need to give me some data, or in essence, prove it. And you have a certain window of time to prove it, after which it becomes either moot or you've risked the inventory. So this is super exciting to me to give you something to say, okay, here's the record of what changed, and what we can maybe do about it, and also not just from a how do I talk to my customer, but how do I be more, if I don't know what changed, how can I respond to it? I need to be able to, because we all want to be responsive to our customers, right? We want to, if they have a problem, they scrapped some part or something and they're like, wow, can you please deliver early? We want to be able to help them. So we need to have visibility of that in order to do that properly. Sorry,
Absolutely.
yeah, getting really
Yep.
excited about this one.
Oh yeah. And the next screens are kind of illustrate that just in a little more fine-grained way. So, this is that view of parts that were ordered and that lead time from you about, because not everything is just there, right? It doesn't component or assemblies aren't always just available. You have lead time that affects your ability to deliver that component, based on the way you manufacture it, right? And the different component pieces to that. And so as that demand fluctuates, you'll want to know, well, has this change affected what I can deliver when? And and is my customer expecting me to deliver more than maybe I expected when I accepted the order? Because again, it changed kind of underneath me. And now I have certain promises that I have to them, but they also have certain promises to me. And that was the acceptance that, hey, it takes me some time to manufacture this. And that's going to affect things. Derek?
Yeah, so I mean, and this is another great one. It's very specific to, okay, what did they move within lead time? So
Right.
do I even have the capacity to either manufacture more or stick more into inventory? But it's just another, again, a super
Yeah.
valuable tool.
Right.
I'll save more of our comments for the next screen because
There we
I could
go.
talk forever on all these things.
There we go. And now this one, and I'll let Derek talk longer on this one. This really makes it that tangible proof of that, hey, this change has affected me monetarily. And I'll leave the rest to you, Derek.
All right. So, I mean, the chart is relatively obvious. It shows, what changed, and then it actually has the dollar impact. I'll give you a quick anecdote. So we were recently visiting a supplier, and they showed us, okay, well, here's something that it didn't get killed from the schedule, but it got pushed out about 8 months. Like, well, how much was that? Well, about $28,000. Like, okay, well, so you think it, and if you've got good 10% margins, okay, you've already spent. So this was within lead time. So they've already bought the raw material, already put the production plan in place, already started production. So they've essentially spent in effort, raw material, and time $25,000 out of the 28 that they're eventually going to ship. And now they don't get to ship it. So they have to carry that for 8 months, right? So that's a huge impact to any size company. I mean, multiply that by whatever multiple your orders typically are, and you have that sort of effect. And then what happens frequently, what this gives them the tools to do is they called up their buyer and said, "Hey, this got pushed out. This is really affecting me." And to Kevin's earlier point, the buyer had no idea that the customer's ERP had done that. And they said, "Oh, well." So it doesn't have to be an adversarial conversation. It's just the sharing of open data saying, "Hey, this moved, we need to talk about it." And they ended up pushing it back in. So boom, 8 months of cash flow for that order right there.
Right.
So this is another great way to just expand the conversation between suppliers and customers, leveling the playing field, as it were.
And what's most important there is you now have the information to go back to the buyer you work with to say, hey, and the buyer may not even know this happened as well, because oftentimes this is their ERP adjusting things to fit their manufacturing schedule, not necessarily, linking together the contracts that you have in place with them that says they're going to be able to accept that and allow you to actually ship that inventory, as was originally agreed upon. So this just gives you that information to have those discussions and make it and give you that that data backup, if you will, so you have full information when you want to have that discussion. So this brings together all those pieces, right? That demand schedule, that linkage to your ERP, bringing together everything from the time you picked up the PO and you set the dates of when you're going to do this, your commits to them, and allows you to maximize what your relationship is with that particular customer. And scaling that across a number of these different supply chain portals, so you can do that with more and more of your customer base. Now, we have a number of customers who use this on a daily basis. As Derek just said, number of these customers rely on this to enhance and improve their relationship with their customers, to get that real-time visibility and do in an automated fashion what is often just a manual process today of updating spreadsheets, manually updating my ERP, and now allowing those things to trigger responses in my business automatically rather than when I find them, and making that all just go a little faster. Now, not only can Exostar do this on the demand line or the demand side, right, with our demand line product, but we also have a companion application supply line, which allows you, to also have that supply chain portal experience with your customers. So you don't have to be a large prime with a huge infrastructure to improve the collaboration with your supply chain itself as well. You can engage with Exostar, establish a supply chain portal for yourself that links into your ERP to expose that side of the business, and then use our companion product, if you will, demand line, to bring in that information to you. Exostar has a number of other solutions for the aerospace and defense industry. Everything from secure collaboration utilizing Microsoft Teams, compliance, particularly around CMMC compliance as those rules and regulations change across, again, the aerospace and defense side. And then, as we've already talked about, our different supply chain applications. Now, I do want to answer a couple of the questions that came in, and I know we're running out of time. So, Derek, I'm gonna ask you to answer a couple of these before we sign off for today.
Sure.
So, for number one, does this allow me to share commit data with my customers as well?
It does. So when we run that, one of the earlier screens where it showed the things that you could do and set the timings for them, one of those was send commits. So it does also allow the automation of sending back those commits ideally directly from your ERP system. Now it can show you what it's going to send for your ERP system before it sends it on to the customer, so you can confirm that, yeah, this is what I want to expose to my customer. But yes, it does automate the promise dating commit process as well.
Okay. I think we have time for just one more. So which of these do you want to answer? And we'll make sure we send an actual answer to the people who submitted the questions as well. But which one do you want to hit the general audience with there?
Let's do I sort of answered 2 and 3, so let's do number 4. What about when I'm actually ready to ship the parts? It does also automate that piece, so it'll see within your ERP system when something is ready to ship with the packing slip. It'll create the shipping notification. It'll create the barcode. So yeah, it follows it all the way through to the point of shipment.
Great. Okay, everybody. Well, we've reached our time, and I don't want to waste anybody's time today because I know we've all got busy schedules. So thanks, everybody, for joining today. Hope we were able to answer your questions about our solutions. If something we said today intrigued you, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to answer those questions. And obviously, we have a number of other events, solutions, etc. Please come to our events page, sign up for some of our other webinars. We'd be more than happy to link up with you that way as well. Thanks again for your time and attention today. And everyone have a great rest of the day. Take care.